In the heart of the dense fog-laden forests of northern England stood an ancient monastery known as St. Agnes Abbey. Hidden away from civilization, it had long been shrouded in mystery and tales of the supernatural. The monks who resided there were said to be devout and reclusive, seldom venturing beyond the monastery's imposing stone walls. But what truly lurked within the sacred grounds of St. Agnes was a secret that chilled the souls of those who had the misfortune of discovering it. I first heard of St. Agnes Abbey from an old friend Daniel. He was an avid historian and a passionate explorer of the unexplained. We shared a fascination with the inexplicable, the paranormal, and the hidden corners of history. When Daniel learned of the rumors surrounding the monastery, he became determined to uncover its secrets. And he convinced me to accompany him on this perilous journey. The journey to St. Agnes Abbey was treacherous. The forests surrounding it were dense and unwelcoming, with ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets to the wind. The fog was ever present, thickening as we approached our destination, as if the very earth itself sought to shield the monastery from our prying eyes. As we finally arrived at the abbey's towering stone walls, a deep sense of unease washed over me. The place felt abandoned, forgotten by time. Its once grand facade was marred by ivy and decay, its bell tower silent and lifeless. Daniel and I cautiously entered through a partially open door, and the moment we stepped inside, an icy chill gripped us. The interior was just as eerie as the exterior, with long, dark corridors illuminated only by the feeble light that struggled through grimy windows. Dust motes danced in the still air, and the silence was so profound it seemed to have a weight of its own. We explored room after room, finding relics of a bygone era. Crumbling books, faded tapestries, and long-abandoned pews. As we ventured deeper into the heart of the monastery, we began to hear faint whispers in the shadows. It was as if the very walls of St. Agnes were trying to communicate with us, their secrets too dark to be spoken aloud. Daniel, ever the fearless investigator, pressed on while I hesitated, my heart pounding. The whispers grew louder and more insistent, and it became clear that they were not mere echoes of the past. They were voices of the long-departed monks who had once inhabited this place. Their spectral forms began to materialize before us, their ghostly robes swaying as they moved in a slow, mournful procession. One figure, taller and more imposing than the rest, stepped forward. His face was obscured by a hood, but his presence radiated authority. He spoke to us in a voice that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the earth, a voice that sent shivers down our spines. "Who dares disturb the sanctity of this place?" he intoned. Daniel, undaunted, introduced himself and explained our quest to uncover the mysteries of St. Agnes Abbey. The spectral monk's response was chilling. He revealed a tale of unspeakable horror that had unfolded within these walls centuries ago. Long ago, the monastery had been a place of great spiritual power. The monks had delved into forbidden rituals and dark practices in their pursuit of ultimate enlightenment. They had summoned entities from the depths of the netherworld, thinking they could harness their power for good. But in doing so, they had unleashed a malevolent force that consumed their souls. As the tale unfolded, the walls of the monastery seemed to weep, and the shadows danced in macabre shapes. The spectral monk told us of the nightmarish horrors that had plagued the monks in the wake of their dark deeds. Visions of blood-soaked altars, agonized screams echoing through the halls, and the relentless pursuit of the malevolent entity they had summoned. Daniel and I listened in horrified fascination, unable to tear our eyes away from the haunting apparition. It was clear that the sins of the past still bound the spirits of the monastery, and they sought a way to break free from their eternal torment. The spectral monk implored us to help them find redemption, to free their souls from the curse that bound them to this accursed place. In a voice filled with sorrow, he revealed that the only way to do so was to confront the malevolent entity that still lurked within the depths of the monastery. Daniel, driven by his insatiable curiosity and a desire to bring peace to the tormented spirits, agreed to the ghostly monk's plea. We descended deeper into the labyrinthine passages, guided by the mournful whispers of the spectral monks. As we reached the heart of the monastery, a sense of foreboding weighed heavily upon us. The air grew thick with malevolence, and the very walls seemed to pulse with dark energy. And then, we saw it, an entity of darkness and despair, a grotesque amalgamation of twisted limbs and hollow eyes. The battle that ensued was beyond description, a clash between the forces of light and darkness, between the living and the dead. Daniel and I fought with every ounce of our strength, calling upon all our knowledge and courage to banish the malevolent entity back to the netherworld from whence it came. In the end, it was a close and harrowing victory. The malevolent entity was vanquished, and as it dissipated into a swirling vortex of darkness, the spectral monks let out a collective mournful cry of relief. The monastery, once a place of unspeakable horror, began to change. The oppressive atmosphere lifted and a faint glimmer of light returned to its hallowed halls. The spectral monks, their faces now peaceful, thanked us with a nod and a whispered blessing. As Daniel and I made our way out of St. Agnes Abbey, the fog had lifted and the forest seemed somehow less forbidding. We knew that we had witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied explanation. The secrets of the haunted monastery were now revealed, and the spirits that had long been trapped within its walls could finally find peace. But we also knew that the price of that revelation was a heavy one. We had faced the darkness head-on, and it had left its mark on us. The memory of St. Agnes Abbey and the horrors we had witnessed would haunt our dreams for the rest of our lives. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of Eastern Europe, nestled within an isolated valley, stood the centuries-old monastery of St. Michael's. Its imposing stone walls loomed like a fortress against the unforgiving landscape. For generations, this remote sanctuary had been a haven for monks seeking spiritual solitude and divine enlightenment. But within the monastery's ancient chambers and echoing halls lay a malevolent secret, one that had been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right souls to unlock its horror. It was a cold and moonless night when my friend, Sarah, and I arrived at St. Michael's. The journey had been treacherous as we traversed winding mountain roads and faced the relentless elements. We were amateur archaeologists and historians, driven by our insatiable curiosity and thirst for the unknown. The tales of St. Michael's had piqued our interest, promising untold secrets and hidden relics. Upon our arrival, we were greeted by the monastery's abbot, a stern man with piercing eyes that seemed to bore into our very souls. He welcomed us with a wary smile, but was reticent to discuss the monastery's history. It was clear that St. Michael's held secrets that the abbot was determined to protect. We were given modest accommodations within the monastery's walls, and as we settled into our austere quarters, a sense of foreboding settled upon us. The air was heavy with a silence so profound that it felt as if the very mountains held their breath. The only sounds were the occasional echoes of monks chanting their prayers in the distance. Our quest for knowledge began the next morning as we embarked on a guided tour of the monastery's ancient library. The abbot had reluctantly granted us access under the condition that we touch nothing without his permission. The library was a vast chamber, lined with ancient tomes and manuscripts, their pages yellowed with age and dusted with the passage of time. Sarah and I split up, each of us drawn to different corners of the library. As I scanned the titles of the books, my eyes fell upon a particularly old and ornate volume. Its leather cover was adorned with intricate carvings of angels and demons locked in eternal combat. The title was written in a language I couldn't decipher, but something about the book's aura compelled me to reach for it. As I carefully opened the ancient tome, a chill coursed through me, and I felt an otherworldly presence in the room. The pages contained bizarre illustrations of rituals, symbols, and incantations. It was a grimoire, a book of dark magic and forbidden knowledge. I glanced around nervously, but the abbot was nowhere to be seen, and Sarah was engrossed in her own research. I continued to leaf through the pages, unable to resist the lure of the forbidden. The grimoire contained incantations that promised power beyond imagination, but at a terrible cost. It spoke of a relic, hidden within the bowels of the monastery, that had the power to bind souls and unleash unspeakable horrors. Before I could delve deeper into the dark tome, the abbot's voice echoed through the library, startling me. He demanded that I close the book and leave the library immediately, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. I hastily obeyed, but the allure of the grimoire and the cryptic mention of the relic had ignited a fire within me. That night, Sarah and I hatched a plan to uncover the monastery's darkest secret. We waited until the monastery was shrouded in darkness and the monks had retired to their cells. Armed with lanterns and a sense of trepidation, we ventured into the labyrinthine passages beneath St. Michael's. The further we descended, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew frigid and the walls seemed to close in around us. It was as if the very earth itself were warning us to turn back. But we pressed on, our determination outweighing our fear. Finally, we stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed behind a tapestry that depicted a battle between angels and demons. The room was bathed in an eerie green light that emanated from an altar at its center. On the altar lay the relic, a grotesque figurine made of an unknown black stone, adorned with ancient symbols. As we approached the relic, a sinister energy pulsed through the chamber. It was as if the very walls were alive, bearing witness to our intrusion. With trembling hands, I reached for the figurine, and as I touched it, a deafening scream pierced the silence. The sound echoed through the chamber, growing louder and more anguished with each passing second. Sarah and I exchanged horrified glances, realizing the gravity of our mistake. We had awakened something that had been imprisoned within the relic for untold centuries. The green light intensified, casting grotesque shadows on the chamber's walls. And then, the abbot appeared, his face contorted with rage and terror. He spoke in a voice that was not his own, a voice filled with ancient malevolence. "You have released the darkness," he declared, his eyes now black voids of despair. "You have doomed us all." The room trembled, and the very ground beneath us shook as the abbot's form transformed into something otherworldly, a grotesque fusion of man and demon. He lunged at us, and we fled in terror, clutching the cursed relic. As we raced through the winding passages of St. Michael's, the monastery itself seemed to come alive, its walls shifting and convulsing. Monks, their faces twisted in torment, emerged from the shadows, reaching out to us with skeletal hands. We finally reached the monastery's main chapel, hoping to find sanctuary within its sacred walls. But the abbot, now a monstrous abomination, cornered us. He unleashed a torrent of dark energy, and the chapel itself seemed to crumble around us. In the end, it was the relic that proved our salvation. Its dark power was unleashed, enveloping the abbot and the malevolent forces that had been awakened. The screams and wails of the trapped souls echoed through the chapel, and the abbot's monstrous form was consumed by the very darkness he had sought to unleash. But the cost was high. St. Michael's lay in ruins, its dark secret forever buried beneath the rubble. Sarah and I were the sole survivors, haunted by the horrors we had witnessed and the knowledge that some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. As we made our way Nestled deep within the rugged, desolate hills of Scotland, the monastery of St. Agatha had long stood as an enigma, a place whispered about in hushed tones. Legend held that it was built upon ancient pagan grounds, and its haunting beauty had drawn countless souls over the centuries. However, the monastery's stunning facade masked a chilling truth, one that defied reason and echoed with the anguished cries of its tormented inhabitants. It was a frigid winter's night when my companions, Michael, Sarah, and I embarked on a journey to unravel the mysteries of St. Agatha's. We were a team of paranormal investigators, drawn to the unexplained and the eerie, with a desire to confront the supernatural. The stories surrounding the monastery had intrigued us for years, and we had finally decided to confront its secrets. Our arrival at St. Agatha's was shrouded in fog, as if the very mountains conspired to keep the monastery hidden from prying eyes. The structure itself loomed like a sentinel against the gloom, its ancient stones exuding an aura of both mystique and dread. As we approached, a sense of foreboding settled upon us, like a cold, clammy hand on our shoulders. We were met by Brother Gabriel, the stern and taciturn guardian of St. Agatha's. His sunken eyes seemed to carry the weight of centuries, and his whispered words carried an unsettling weight. He warned us to tread lightly, for the monastery held secrets that were not meant for mortal understanding. Our quarters within the monastery were modest but comfortable. The rooms were decorated with religious icons and illuminated by the soft flickering light of candles. As we settled in, we could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes watched our every move. Our first night was uneventful, but we had come prepared with an array of paranormal detection equipment. We eagerly set up our cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field meters, ready to capture any evidence of the supernatural. Little did we know that the true horrors of St. Agatha's would reveal themselves in the darkest hours. It was on the second night that we first heard the whispers. They were faint, like distant echoes carried on the wind. Sarah claimed they were voices calling to her, beckoning her deeper into the monastery's labyrinthine corridors. Against our better judgment, we followed her into the shadows. The whispers grew more insistent, guiding us through hidden passages and forgotten chambers. It was as if the very walls of St. Agatha's were conspiring to lead us to our doom. The air grew colder, and the flickering candles cast eerie shadows that danced on the walls like specters. In one forgotten chamber, we discovered a relic, an ornate box carved with intricate symbols. It pulsed with a malevolent energy that sent shivers down our spines. As we approached, the box creaked open, revealing a tattered manuscript written in an ancient forgotten script. The manuscript spoke of a ritual, a dark and forbidden ceremony that would grant unspeakable power to those who dared to perform it. It promised the ability to commune with the dead and control the forces that lay beyond the mortal realm. The words seemed to crawl off the pages, infecting our thoughts with a maddening desire to perform the ritual. Sarah, driven by an irresistible compulsion, volunteered to be the vessel through which the ritual would be enacted. We hesitated, but the manuscript's influence over us was undeniable. With trembling hands, we prepared the chamber according to the instructions in the manuscript, drawing arcane symbols on the cold stone floor. As the ritual began, the monastery itself seemed to come alive. The walls shook, and the candles flickered wildly. The air was charged with electricity, and a palpable sense of dread settled upon us. Sarah's voice, under the control of forces beyond our comprehension, intoned incantations that echoed through the chamber like a haunting lament. Then, it happened. A darkness, formless and malevolent, materialized before us. It writhed and twisted, its shape ever-changing, like a nightmare given life. It spoke to us in a chorus of agonized voices, promising power and knowledge beyond imagining. But as quickly as it had appeared, the darkness turned on us. It lashed out with tendrils of shadow, enveloping Sarah and Michael in its suffocating grasp. Their screams filled the chamber, a chorus of despair that echoed through the monastery's stone walls. In a desperate bid to save my friends, I hurled the relic, the source of the darkness, into the ritual circle. The chamber convulsed, and the darkness screamed in fury as it was pulled back into the relic. Sarah and Michael were released from its grasp, but the price was high. The monastery itself seemed to weep, its tones groaning in torment. Brother Gabriel, who had been mysteriously absent until now, appeared in the chamber, his face etched with sorrow. He explained that the darkness we had unleashed was an ancient malevolent force, a guardian of the monastery's darkest secret. With a heavy heart, Brother Gabriel revealed the truth. The monastery was indeed built upon pagan grounds, and beneath its hallowed stones lay an abyss that held the souls of those who had dared to trespass on sacred ground. The relic we had discovered was a prison, containing the malevolent force that guarded the abyss. The darkness had been set free once before, centuries ago, by monks seeking forbidden knowledge. It had wreaked havoc upon the monastery and had claimed the souls of the guilty. Brother Gabriel himself had been among the survivors, burdened with the duty of guarding the relic and preventing its release. As the monastery trembled, we made a desperate decision. With Brother Gabriel's guidance, we sealed the relic once more, condemning the darkness to its prison for all eternity. The ritual circle was broken, and the monastery's torment seemed to abate. But the price had been paid in full. Sarah and Michael were forever changed by their ordeal, their minds haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. We left St. Agatha's, vowing never to return, haunted by the knowledge that some secrets are better left buried and some mysteries are better left unsolved. As we descended from the mist-shrouded hills of Scotland, the monastery's silhouette faded into the distance, a dark and silent sentinel against the unforgiving landscape. The monastery of St. Agatha remained a chilling reminder that the pursuit of forbidden knowledge can lead to unspeakable horrors and that the boundaries between the mortal and the supernatural